Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it's September the 12th, 2023. It is day 566 of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And yesterday, I mentioned that the Ukrainians have recaptured the oil rigs, the floating oil platforms out in the Black Sea. And I suggested in that video that it was a mostly symbolic gesture, that these weren't that important, yada, yada. And PTH 2791 here replied, wait a minute, aren't they being used as radar stations by the Russians? Hopefully it's more than symbolic. So that got me thinking. So I went looking and I found a paper written by a Dr. Yorick Isik from the Bosphorus Observer. That's a naval consultancy. And then I found an interview with him. And he had a lot to say about these oil platforms. And guys, this goes to the point. Remember, I am not a military expert, but I listen to the experts. And Dr. Yorick Isik's interview is on YouTube with UATV. No, I'm sorry, Polish TV, TVP. And in this interview, Dr. Yorick goes on at great lengths to help us understand just how tactically significant this win is. PTH here, who's one of my Patreon supporters, thank you. He makes the point, wasn't it used as radar stations? Hell yeah, they were being used as radar stations. Essentially, right, you know how if you got a big house, sometimes the router doesn't get out to the porch or to the patio, or maybe you have a little guest house in the back, and you need an extender to extend the range of your internet service, right? These platforms were internet extenders for the Russian Black Sea fleet. Without these radar installations, I'm not saying that they're blind to the northwest corner of the Black Sea, but the level of resolution, their availability to see into the northwest part of the Black Sea is extremely circumscribed. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the shipping lanes. Now, you know, the Russians have tried to block everything coming out of Odessa. And they've created a safety corridor through Romanian waters. The difficulty there, as Dr. Yorick explained, is that if the ship has a draft of more than 12 meters, it can't navigate that safety corridor. So bigger ships that have that are deeper than 12 meters have to go out through the deep water part of the Black Sea. Well, guess what? That shipping lane goes right between these oil platforms, which gave the Russians essentially firing positions that they could lock down that lane of international shipping traffic. That's a big deal. Without these platforms, Russia's ability to blockade Odessa is greatly diminished. Then there's the reality of how the Ukrainians might use these platforms themselves to launch amphibious as launching pads for amphibious or helicopter assaults against Crimea, right? Because they're halfway there. I was mistaken when I said that this was symbolic. It is symbolic, certainly, in a lot of ways, because the Russians have controlled these platforms since 2015. The Russians are now giving up gains that they've had for 8 years of war. That's significant. The Russians no longer have insight into the northwest part of the Black Sea. Significant. The Russians don't have a launching pad for attacks into Ukraine from the Black Sea. Significant. The Ukrainians have a launching pad for attacks into Crimea from the Black Sea. Significant. The Ukrainians have control over the shipping lanes for deep water vessels. Significant. So that's the overview of just how important these oil platforms are. Now, the big question, of course, is, could Russia destroy them? Well, not without risking a huge environmental disaster, which they did with the Novokakhovka Dam. But if suddenly 1 million gallons of crude oil is spilling into the Black Sea every day and Russia's to blame, that's press that they might not be able to handle right now with everything else they got on their plates. Might they try to disable the platforms or take them back? They may. They may. And so the Ukrainians are going to have to take steps to defend them. We don't know what those steps are. We're not sure, of course, what's happening there. But the guess would be that there'll be some kind of air defense systems moving onto the platforms if they're not there already. This is a huge win. It's a tactically significant win. And it provides the Ukrainians with a new resource and the Russians with a new embarrassment. Thank you, my friends. Make it a great day.